Good afternoon. I am back with a Support Now series with my friend Kasie. This is part two. As I alluded to in our previous session, Kasie had battled cancer as a child, which really shaped her adult life and the way that she serves others. And her journey did not end with childhood cancer. And so we thought it was best to really give her a couple of sessions to talk about her story because it's a pretty wild one. So, Kasie, um, we talked last time, we ended last time around how your thyroid cancer certainly affected you emotionally, socially, physically, and all that has come with having to get routine cancer checks. I know we touched last time a bit on becoming a mother, but I'd love for you to share kind of the second half, call it, of your story, at least so far, of what was to come after surviving and thriving post-thyroid cancer.
After, and again, living without a thyroid, and I shared last series of what that looked like and all of the side effects from the treatments. I knew that becoming a mother was going to be more difficult. I was warned we should freeze the eggs, and I was 13, and we did not have the funds to do that. So I knew that that was a risk that I was taking at that time, but I did not have the option, to freeze my eggs before treatments. And so when that time came, I got married, and Brandon and I actually, before we got married, I had found out that I was pregnant and had multiple miscarriages before Noah, which required a DNC, and we just didn't know why. I was getting pregnant, but I was not able to stay pregnant, and so we ultimately decided to have some further testing done, and it showed really that everything was normal. I did have like a blood clotting number that came back, so they put me on a blood thinner during when I got pregnant again, which happened to be with Noah. And so everything was going perfect. I made it past 12 weeks. And, all of my previous miscarriages had happened at 8, 9 weeks. And so making it to that milestone, it was just kind of like, okay, we're here. I can relax now. And we found out the gender. We had a gender reveal. And then at my 20-week scan, again, I had no concerns because I felt him moving all of the time. Everything was looking great. I went in and had my normal 20-week scan. Nothing seemed odd, the tech doesn't really tell you much. I didn't ask questions. I just saw a perfectly healthy looking baby, to my knowledge, on the screen. And I actually had to run back to work, and my doctor was running late. He was in an emergency C-section. So they were like, "Do you want to reschedule to see, normally you see the doctor after?" I was like, "No, if you could just call me and let me know everything's fine, that's good enough for me." So I go back to work, and like 6:30 that evening, I get a call from my doctor, my OB. And again, I wasn't really too concerned, but he basically was like, "Kasie, how are you feeling?" It's like, "Pretty good, doing a little better." He's like, "Okay, well, I have some unfortunate news." He's like, "The baby's heart is not fully developed. Um, it has a major heart condition, so we need to get you back in to see what the diagnosis is." And of course, all I said to him was, I knew something was gonna happen.
Mm.
And he just said, "This is not your fault. Everything's gonna be okay." And just, I didn't ask any more questions. I didn't know what to ask. Of course, I stayed up all night Googling, um, heart conditions, and, the next morning went into an MFM where we found out that the baby, again, we didn't get a full diagnosis, but he explained to me that, the baby only had 2 chambers, not 4, like a typical heart, and we needed to consider termination, because it was very unlikely that Noah was gonna make it to birth, and if he did, he was likely not going to see his first year of life. I had brought my best friend with me. My husband was working out of town, and, she was taking notes, and I remember walking out and being like, do I terminate? Like, what do I do? I don't like, am I just carrying this baby for him not to make it? Like, what's going to be the easiest for, him? And so I had to wait 5 days to go see the pediatric cardiologist where we had a fetal echo, and they made the diagnosis that Noah had hypoplastic left heart. So his left side of the heart did not form and was not working. So, HLHS is what I'll call it from here, and is essentially, it's a syndrome. And so, um, most kids, go about a 3 series surgery, which will hopefully allow them to make it to adolescent age to then go on to get a transplant. So, 3 open heart surgeries, the first one being the first week of life, the second one being called the Glen, which is 3 to 6 months of life, and then the third one being the Fontan, which is 2 to 5 years of life. Again, that's very textbook case, HLHS, and what kid is, dealing with this as a textbook case. They're all each their own journeys, and so we really had to learn that. So yeah, so that was my 20 week, and
Mm.
I felt really guilty. I felt like it was my fault. I had already so much, insecurity about having cancer and like possibly having difficulty having a family, and then this happened. And
Yeah.
um there were so many unknowns, and so I just started researching a lot on where we could find him the best care, which ultimately led us to relocating to Houston, to start our journey there.
Kasie, I'm gonna stop you there for a second. You gave me chills when you said what your response was to the doctor when you said, I knew I knew this was going to happen. I knew effectively, like I knew this was too good to be true. How did you, in those days, weeks, kind of take care of yourself? Were you one just kind of internalizing it? Did you share right away? Kind of how did you almost like grieve to some degree this reality that perhaps this healthy baby that you had dreamed of wasn't going to be as you had wished?
Yeah, I mean, it really is a grieving process because motherhood to me then looked nothing like what I had imagined. So having a baby shower, having a nursery was not an option. We weren't going to be home for what would be 10 months for us. But the possibility of not coming home at all also was there as well. And so, yes, I did share. I shared on social media, I guess like a couple weeks later. And right away, actually, after that weekend that we were waiting to see the cardiologist, I started searching the hashtags for hypoplastic left heart and HLHS, and I started reaching out to mothers on there. And I met she's a great friend. She's actually here in Austin, and she's a heart mom. Her son has HLHS, and I remember talking to her, and she said, "No, there is so much hope." Like, Sonny was a year at the time, and they actually ended up coming to the baby shower that I did have for before Noah. But yeah, so that it gave me so much hope to see so many positive stories. Of course, there were ones that, did not end positively, but it was so great to be able to talk to moms who had been through it
Hmm.
and tell me what to somewhat expect. Just try to kind of lean into them as much as possible and rely on them to say, what questions do I ask the doctor now? What do I expect for this? And that was such a blessing to have. And again, I think of that as like, as I shared, like back when I was going through cancer, like we didn't have any of that. And so it was such a great tool to have to not feel alone in that
Yeah.
moment of, and Brandon and I, again, we were so newly married. Um, we just were dealing with it in completely different ways.
How did he process it?
Did not wanna talk about it, internalized, and, Yeah, I think it was just both really hard because I'm a crier and I was so upset and I was very hormonal at the time and I just was devastated, but I also didn't want to pour all of that onto him because I knew he was feeling the weight even though I wasn't seeing it.
In those situations, if you are a friend of someone who receives a diagnosis while someone's pregnant, everyone's devastated. I've been in situations like that as well. And I do think there's an awkwardness where people don't quite know what to do. For you, what was the most helpful thing that people could do for you in kind of while Noah was still in your belly, while you were still processing that information? What were some of the little things that people could have done for you?
Yeah, I mean, being there to talk to, even if it wasn't about the situation, like, "Tell me about your drama. Tell me about your day." Just getting my mind off of it, right? And normalizing, like, life as much as possible. Also, like I said, like, my friend went with me to the appointment just to take notes,
Mhm.
and that was so helpful because I pretty much blacked out that whole time, so I was trying to voice to Brandon after I got out of that appointment what was said, and I had no idea, and so I put her on the phone to try to help me, process and help relay that information that I honestly couldn't at the time. And just showing up, I think we all so much say, "Oh, well, let me know how I can help." No, like, show up. Just almost not force yourself, but on them, but, just showing up because I think in those times, it's so hard for us to know what we need.
Yep.
And then looking back, I'm like, "Wow, like, that was so helpful," and I would have never come up with that list of things, of what I thought I needed at that time. But yeah, I had a great support system, and my family and my friends really encouraged to have a baby shower and helped, put that and make that happen, um, which I'm so thankful, right, that we did that.
I think that's wonderful advice. And so I want you to keep going. So, kind of talk us through third trimester, birth.
Yeah. So, we ended up relocating to Houston and we were living in just a garage apartment because I was so afraid to sign a lease. We just didn't know what was going to happen. We were having 2 scans a week at that point. I had to relocate at 36 weeks. Brandon and I were both working full time. And I remember my 38-week appointment, the doctor said his heart function's getting worse, and it's very possible he's not going to be a candidate for these surgeries. And so, it was just so much unknown. We really did not know if we were going to just hold him for a few minutes and say our goodbyes, or if we would truly, it was so difficult, trying to be excited for him to be there, but then also knowing that he was, like, safe in my belly, so wanting to just let time stop and sit in that moment because I felt him kicking and he was so full of life in there.
Mm.
So we relocated. Brandon and I just tried to keep busy. And then I gave birth to Noah on July 30th at 11 in the morning, surrounded by about 20 doctors and nurses in the room. And I got to hold him for a couple seconds, and then, they took him to the baby warmer where they actually did a little procedure right there in the room with me that took about an hour and a half, so he was right beside me while he got that procedure. Then he was whisked away to the ICU, the cardiac ICU, which thankfully the hospital where I delivered, they have the delivery rooms, and then in the other building, which are connected, they have the cardiac ICU, so I could visit him later on. But Brandon got to go with Noah right away, and where they got him stable and hooked up to medications. Yeah, it was so hard. He was my first, right? So I didn't really know what was normal.
Mhm.
And he looked like a normal baby to me. He looked healthy and he looked like nothing was wrong with him, and so it was so difficult for me to really grasp that he was about to go into this major open heart surgery. where they would have to stop his heart.
Mm.
And there was just so much risk. This first surgery was the riskiest one. They're all extremely risky, but this one really was the most fragile. You're talking about a 8-day old. He was 8 days old during his first open heart surgery. The heart is the size of a walnut. And these
Wow.
surgeries are 12, 14, 16 hours long. And it's just really miraculous that someone, can even has the skill set to do that. And so, yeah, it was really, really difficult for me. Of course, then going through all the hormones and postpartum, not being able to breastfeed him, it was just very, very difficult. And we were away from home, and there was just, again, so many unknowns. But he went in at 8 days old for his first open heart surgery. And the night prior, he started looking really dusty, really purple. Again, he only has half a heart. So his SATs at best were 75, 80. And so you could really hear his breathing was very labored. Like, I look at videos now and I'm like, wow, like, how did I think that he looked normal? Because he looks so sick.
Yeah.
But it kind of was a blessing to be able to visualize just how sick he started looking the night prior, because I knew in my heart he needed the surgery. And yeah, he had his first surgery, and I had seen pictures and videos to try to prepare, like, what that would look like after, but I don't think anything can really prepare you. He had about 100 lines, 3 chest tubes, he
Mm.
was open chest, so I could see his heart, um, and yeah, he was just purple, and he's a 7-pound baby, we couldn't hold him and touch him, and so it was so hard, to see your baby like that, and I think in the time, I was so tired and just processing everything, and, so many emotions that you're just truly surviving. But we had friends and family there during surgery day. We were playing, like, games and just trying to keep us busy. They, brought food, and yeah, I couldn't imagine if, we didn't have our support system there those days, those surgery days. And then recovery came, and Noah had a rough recovery, but he ended up, doing pretty well. And about 6 weeks later, we got to be out of the hospital, and we had actually got an apartment right across the street. Because we were not able to go back to Austin yet. We had to stay there. And about a few weeks later after that, October 26th, he went into cardiac arrest at home with me
Oh.
while I was giving him medication. And I don't even really remember the whole thing. I remember calling 911, but we were on the 25th floor of our apartment and lost signal. And we jumped in some random car that was being valeted in front of our apartment. And I rushed him to the ER, where he then needed his second open heart surgery 2.5 weeks later. Um, and this one was a hard one because he was so sick. They were just really unsure that they weren't sure if he was going to be able to be taken off bypass after his second surgery. So we had to go through the whole transplant evaluation, um, and he ultimately had his second open heart surgery, the Glenn, and afterwards he had a, hemothorax, so he had an internal bleed. He coded, needed resuscitating, um, and had to go back into the OR, and then came back out with an open chest again. Yeah, it was just so much trauma, and, watching your little baby, like, go through so much. And Um, yeah, that was the second open heart surgery, and then we ultimately ended up coming back home, March 1st of 2020.
Wow.
He was puking about 20 times a day. He was on 40 doses of meds a day, um, and then COVID hit 2 weeks later. And so we got home, and then COVID hit, and here, going from our family going from the ICU, where we had probably 40 people in and out of our room in a 24-hour period and all eyes on Noah, to sitting at our house alone with Noah, and just
Wow.
it was such an adjustment, it was, like, all the weight and all of that pressure of, like, trying to keep him stable, when he was so critical still, was very difficult, and again, too, it was such a hard time because it was COVID, and here I have a medically fragile baby. So, how do you get help in those times?
Yeah. And how did you take care of yourself? I mean, you alluded to it a couple of times earlier around the hormones, he wasn't even 1 years old. I mean, I'm really I had a child, my second kid in COVID, and I remember how hard that was. And I didn't have nearly the trials that you have. I mean, how did you stay positive? How did you maintain kind of your sanity without the support of your family and friends around you at that time?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to sugarcoat it and say that I did a great job at it, and I'm just not that's not at all. I really struggled. I was diagnosed with postpartum depression. My anxiety was through the roof. Of course, sleep deprived because we were getting up with Noah multiple times, almost every hour, for something, med speed because he was vomiting, because of the pulse ox going off. The beeps constantly go from the ICU, but they're also in your home too. Um, we ultimately ended up getting Noah got a nurse, that would come in home with us, which again, that was hard for me because I didn't know what she was doing or who she was around at home during COVID. So, but I had to take care of myself in order to take care of Noah. And again, just like relying on those friends that I met who also had heart kids who were going through very similar things. I didn't mention this, but before I had Noah, there was a pregnancy class for heart moms that were getting ready to be delivered there at the hospital, and that was so great because it was about 6 of us, and we all exchanged information, and I still talk to them to this day, but we were all so, like, within a month to 3 months in our journeys, and so we all had our babies 1 to 3 months apart, and so we're all going through all of these stages, and while we all looked very differently because, again, each child is so different, it was so nice to be able to lean on them during this time. And again, like, our neighbors were so great. The meals were so great because I couldn't go to the grocery store. I was terrified at that time. Um, Curbside, I don't even know that that was a thing yet.
Yeah,
So,
no, it
it was
became a
great.
thing.
It became a thing, but it was just really such a blessing because, I mean, during all of the meds and the feeds and Noah's care, it was like, how am I gonna cook? How am I gonna get to the grocery, it just all the moving parts, but such a crazy time,
And it really was such a crazy time. I mean, again, for even able-bodied, healthy adults, everyone struggled mentally, physically, emotionally. And then you throw in your firstborn being this medically fragile and just the unknowns that come with that. I mean, really just I'm exhausted thinking about it because I would imagine that there was never really a second where you really exhaled because you you just never knew what the next hour would bring, let alone the next day or the next week.
yeah, so hard, looking back now, I mean, I just didn't process so much because I was still in the thick of it, um, and then, Noah, I actually found I was pregnant in May with my second daughter, and Brandon and I had had so many conversations, especially going through all of that, that we were not going to have another baby because we were so terrified of having another sick baby, and just watching everything that Noah went through. We just didn't want, another to have to see another baby and another baby to go through all of that, and so found out I was pregnant, really freaked out, and, of course, I couldn't calm down. Before it was 12 weeks. I had to make it to 12 weeks and then I could breathe. And now it was I have to make it to the 20-week scan and then I can breathe. And so we had the 20-week scan, we had the fetal echo, everything that's great. And again, too, it was like COVID, so you didn't have as many tests. I didn't see the doctor as much. It was very kind of hands off. And I welcomed my daughter February of 21 and still in the midst of Noah being extremely medically fragile. And then fast forward to 22, we had a doctor's appointment that determined Noah was no longer a candidate for his third open heart surgery that he needed to live, which was the Fontan. And his heart failure was very severe. His tricuspid valve regurgitation was very severe. And so there was no other option except a heart transplant. And um, that was really, really hard for us because it felt like we were almost like skipping a part of what was gonna get him further down this journey. Most of these kids, they end up needing a heart transplant, but then we were just skipping this whole surgery that was then going to shorten our time, and that was really hard to accept, and again, grieving this, like, this thought and idea that we had and planned, right? Like, okay, we came to a point where we accepted, okay, he's gonna have these 3 heart surgeries, and then eventually we'll get a transplant, and that just wasn't
Yeah.
hit the plan. And so we listed him for a heart transplant, July of 22. We got to wait at home for, about, I guess, 8 months, maybe 6 months, and then in February 15th of 23, he was admitted because he was too sick to stay home. And then he went downhill really quickly after that. We had a lot of really tough conversations in the hospital, about what life was gonna look like, and we were actually to the point of bringing him home on hospice, because he was struggling so bad, and he every day would ask 20 times a day, "I just wanna go home, I just wanna go home," and we
Mm.
were so new into the wait inpatient, and most kids, the only way to get a heart is to be 1A inpatient. It's just the way that the time works, the time accrued, and so we were only in the hospital for a couple weeks before Noah started really declining. He was no longer able to eat anything in his tube. He was completely TPN, and lipid, fed, and so it was just such a hard time. And Brandon and I had had a conversation earlier in this particular week. It was the last week of March, and we said, "Okay, we're gonna talk to the team, and if things don't improve in the next week, we're gonna bring him home on hospice and try to change his status to, like, a 1B or a 2 even," knowing that we're likely not gonna get a heart at that point, but again, we just wanted him to be comfortable and, if that was what was meant to happen, we just did not want it to be in the hospital. And so we had this whole team meeting, and Brandon and I had actually had dinner plans that night. So I'd had a sitter at the hospital with Noah. And so we went to meet with the team and we walked out of that team meeting. And again, we kind of discussed everything that I just said. And we got in the car and I get a call from a cardiologist. And we're in like 5 o'clock traffic going to dinner. And I answer and she says, "Are you still here?" Like, "No, we're driving to dinner." And she goes, "Okay, I need you to pull over." And I said, I couldn't actually respond because I knew it was really good because of the tone of her voice. But Brandon said, "We can't. We're in traffic, like on a bridge." And she's like, "Okay, well, we got an offer." And yeah, I don't even know. I just said, "Okay." Like a real, like we got an offer today. And I mean, it was just so bizarre. It was, not even 15 minutes after we'd gotten out of this conversation with the
Wow.
team. And yeah, it was a she said it was, it was a great offer, and we ultimately ended up accepting. Noah went into surgery the next morning, and it was
Wow.
about an 18-hour day. So he got out at 1 a.m. The next morning. And we were surrounded by a group of 8 to 10 friends all day in a room, trying
Unbelievable.
to
Wow.
stay sane.
Unbelievable.
Um, yeah, while we got updates of, the plane's taking off, the plane has landed, we're driving to the hospital, we saw the heart, it looks good, we've accepted, we're coming back home, or we're coming back to the hospital with the heart. And so going through this whole day with us and, just praying and um, feeding us. And yeah, it was such a blessing to be surrounded by so much love on that day, because that was a tough one, because we were so excited and so happy for Noah because we knew this was what he needed. We were, so close to um, bringing him home. But then thinking of the other side, we knew that there was a family that had just lost their baby, and we knew nothing about the donor. And so that was just so hard because, knowing what a sacrifice, right? And that there's this other family that's suffering.
It's so many layers of emotion. It's hard to even peel back all of it between the decisions y'all had to make, this miracle call, and then knowing what Noah getting his heart means for another family. I would imagine for any family that is in a situation similar to yours, that's one that everyone struggles with. It's just the idea that while your moments are filled with such joy and gratitude, it comes with someone else feeling differently. And I don't know that anyone can ever really understand the layers and the nuance of that. And how beautiful that we live in a world where that's possible. It's really emotional to think about the idea that someone can pass and still give so much.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
look at Noah now. I mean, please
mhm.
share, like, how is he doing now?
Yeah, so Noah got his heart on April 1st of 23, and
Mm.
the doctor talked to us and said there was so much backflow from just all of these collaterals that his body had built that, thank God that this heart was big, because it almost didn't take all of it, all of the backflow that it was getting. And he said, this is going to be a slower recovery. And we thought, okay, slow to us,
Yeah.
in the previous surgeries was
Yeah. You're
weeks,
so used to
months for
right.
some of them.
Yeah.
So I'm preparing, like, okay, it's gonna be a few weeks. Noah was off of the vent within 24 hours. He
Wow.
was sitting up within 48, and he was riding a bike in the hallway within 72 hours. Um, We said yeah, it was wild. We could not get him to stand. They want him to walk, and I said, "Okay, go find a bike. I know this is probably gonna be very frowned upon, but go find a bike, and I promise you that will get him up." And so I have this video of him riding the bike and the surgeon walking by thinking, "What is he doing?" But, just wow, like, what a miracle, that he was riding a bike. And we were discharged 11 days later.
Wow.
When we got home, and he's doing today now he's doing incredible. It was a rough year, a lot of ups and downs. But today he is currently in kindergarten. He's at school now. And the wittiest, most normal, funny 5-year-old who thinks he's 15 kid ever. So we're
Wow.
just really, really thankful. And yeah, it's just like, it's so wild to think now, seeing him, he's running, he's playing. he's doing all of the normal things.
It's amazing. It's amazing. That is a beautiful place to end for now. Kasie, again, thank you for just everything. What an inspiration. What a beautiful story of hope for any family that finds themselves in a similar situation. Um, and thank you for just being honest around your own ways of processing this. Um, I'm not sure you're completely out of it because in some ways it just happened. He's only 5. I would imagine that there's still a lot that you have to work through as you process. Oh wow, I survived that. I'm just to allow yourself to thrive again. Again, it's always hard enough as moms to kind of come out of that fog, and then you add all the trauma of what you experience and the questions of,
Yeah.
well, what if we would have done this and then we didn't? I mean, what what you've been through
I
is,
don't
whew.
I don't think there's a perfect answer or a book on how to handle or go through all of these things. I think we each just kind of have to, day by day. That was what I always said, day by day. Sometimes it's moment by moment, sometimes second by second. Um, right now I'm able to take it pretty much week by week. So we're in a good place.
Well, thank you, Kasie. We will pick up next time again with more on Noah and frankly, just more on how both of these experiences have shaped the way that you support folks in your community, what you've learned. But this context, this foundation is so meaningful towards that conversation. So thank you again for your generous time. We'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.